Now, I might be pushing on you as I just done a reflection yesterday, and here's another day, and you might say, oh my gosh, how much is he doing? But I have to tell you, in my spiritual life, there's been two writers that have just had a tremendous impact on me. The first was Henry Nouwen, and the other was Thomas Merton. I used to listen back when I used to drive a lot. I would listen to books on tape, and I listened to the book called Seven Story Mountain, a book written back in 1949 by Thomas Merton. And it talks about how he's a professor, how he's doing this, he's doing that, and eventually he comes to having a retreat at this monastery, this abbey in Kentucky, and Trappist monks basically is where he had his retreat, and he goes back to his life, and then he starts realizing, holy cow, there's something there. This place, this monastery, is the true center of America, and he goes there and he becomes absolutely famous because he writes the story. It's an autobiography, but it becomes a bestseller in the country. So all of a sudden, boom, Thomas Merton, who is going off to like be by himself and to just like go into contemplation and prayer, all of a sudden he's a celebrity. And so it's a little bit of a contradiction, but he continues. His superiors say, listen, you're doing some good with this writing, you keep it up. And so he did. He was like a prolific writer. He wrote tremendous amount of stuff, communicated with lots of people, popes included, and yet never had a superior type of position at all, none. And in his early days, he would talk about how the spiritual was almost like a romance. He felt like he's just pulled and his heart was long. But then as he matures, he goes beyond that. At one point, he's talking about the Franciscans. Some Franciscan said he finally had some spiritual experience after years of doing it. He goes, years of doing it? He goes, we have spiritual experiences all the time. And it was just kind of interesting how he has this just common, easy way of going. Well, Thomas Merton, there's actually a Thomas Merton Society, and they recorded a bunch of his talkings. He used to not teach, but I guess give classes to the novitiates. Novitiates are the ones who are like taking a year off, where they're not really studying, but they're trying to grow in their spiritual life as they're going on to be a monk and priest or brother. And he has this common way of talking that just sounds like a regular guy. He's funny at times. He's bringing in anecdotes from all kinds of places, and you realize he's an extremely educated man. Now, he had been a university professor. He was born, I'm not sure exactly if he was in France or England, but he had studies over in Europe considerably, came to Columbia, I think, and finished some of his doctoral work, and then was teaching. But the good life that he had, he found just wasn't satisfying. So he goes on, he has this wonderful spiritual life. I read a book of his called Seeds of Contemplation, which is just amazing. And then lately, I've read a book that he had written years later, I don't know, 7, 8 years later, saying New Seeds of Contemplation. It was so helpful. It's just so incredible. Now, he was pulled to go beyond that. I think Joan Baez, if I recall, asked him to go to the protest movement against the war. He had written a lot of things against the war, such that he was silenced. He was commanded by his superiors not to say anything more about the Vietnam War, because he just said it's horrible. And he was in communication with I'm trying to think, it was a monk or a spiritual Vietnamese fellow that he thought very highly of. And when he got descriptions of what was going on there, he just found it atrocious. At a time when that was not real popular. He was also pulled to be into a romantic setting. At one point he was injured and he almost I think he did fall in love with a nurse, but then decided to stay with the contemplative life. And what's interesting is, as he progressed in his spirituality, he had an experience, I don't know if I have the exact name of it, a year of it, but he had an experience he was pretty far along. He had gone into Louisville, Kentucky, for some medical thing, might have been dental work, I'm not sure. And he had this experience. He's at a corner, a very busy intersection, and I'll read what he wrote because it's really good. I was suddenly overwhelmed with the realization that I loved all these people, the people just standing around, that they were mine and I theirs, that we could not be alien to one another even though we were total strangers. It was like we were walking in a dream of separateness, the spurious self-isolation in a special world, the world of renunciation and supposed holiness. So all of a sudden he realizes not only is he not alone, but he's already connected to people, even the people he doesn't know, that we are all, there's a something in our essence that we are all one. That's really good. Recently, I wrestled a couple of years back with this problem of humility. I tend not to be too humble. And in his book, New Seeds of Contemplation, he had wonderful advice, the best advice I've ever received. He said, when you pray, when you contemplate, when you try to come to your God, when you try to do serious thought, don't think of yourself. It's a disaster. Because all of us, when we think of ourselves, we're looking at this false image, the image we think we are. And if people tell us what they say we are, that's also from their angle. And so you can't quite trust that. And since you can't get a good view of yourself, the best thing you can do, don't think of yourself. You can think of others, you can think of the God, you can think of the Lord, you can think of steps, but do not think of yourself. I found that very helpful. I really did. I owe a lot to Thomas Merton, and I encourage, if you want to check into thomasmerton.org or whatever, or read any of his books, it will move you. It has moved me, and it has helped me in my spiritual life, and I ask you to consider it yourself. Thanks, and have a good day.